Heyo everybody, Haku here with my review for Boku no Hero Academia Season 3, Episode 10. Great like every week. Sorry if this video is a little bit late, but I feel like they've been a little bit late most Saturdays. I just feel like the weekends should be my least busy time of the week, and then somehow every weekend ends up being my most busy time of the week, outside of YouTube at least. I'm sorry that these videos are constantly... Except for last week, they've all been actually up Saturday, but I'm sorry that they're up a little bit later than I would have preferred. Either way, let's talk about this episode a bit. I thought it was great. When I first watched it, I thought it was great, but there were a few things where I feel like it was because I watched it first thing in the morning, maybe I was nitpicking a little bit more than I should be. Because when I watched it the first time, there were like a few things where I was like, I'm not sure how I feel about that. It's still good, but, always throwing that button there. And then I watched a few people's reactions to it and their videos on it, of course. And as I saw the clips play again and again, and as I went back and watched it a second time in order to take notes for the review, I came to enjoy it more the more I saw it, and to see more that I was like, I was nitpicking too much. This is great. This is really, really good. Also, there are so many good details I noticed, so many small things that I think add a lot into the overall show itself. But we start off, talking about this from the beginning onward, with a short recap of last episode's events leading straight into the villains being transported out. And I really like that, the way that the recap felt like a scene just flowing into the first scene of the new episode and just going straight from what we saw last time into new things that we haven't seen. All Might then leaves the Nomu to Endeavor, and I love the interaction between them, because it's sort of like, it gives me this feeling of Endeavor's the one always out there solving all these crimes, doing the pedantic, tedious stuff. He has the most incidents resolved, we know that, but he's number 2, while All Might's running off, getting the big fights and everything, and shining in front of the citizens where they can all look at him and say, oh, he's number 1, and Endeavor's just the one doing the more grunt hero work. He's putting in the work, I guess, while All Might is just doing the big things that everyone sees. Again, that's not saying anything bad about All Might or particularly good about Endeavor. It's just this cool relationship between the two of them that they kind of have, where Endeavor just... I feel like he sort of internally sighs and is just like, so what? Go run off then, leave this to me. Or he's like, so if you're gonna run off, just do it. And All Might's like, okay, I'll leave it to you. So I love that interaction that the two of them have. We get to see what happened with the end of last episode. Sebastiana saved everyone, and I can feel like I've not seen anybody say this, but I feel like there are going to be some people that are like, oh, why didn't they kill off those characters? It makes it feel weak. I don't think so, because I think that this show does a really good job of making the stakes really big, without really death being a huge threat. Like, in a lot of shows, it's like, oh, the main characters are super protected, they're not going to die, nothing bad's going to happen, where even though I feel like, okay, these are the main characters, they're probably not going to die, there is that shred of doubt where I'm like, I could see it potentially happening, but what I fear more is there are a lot of things you can fear for the important characters, almost more than you would fear for death, whereas with other shows that don't have much death, they forget to write in a lot of those good small things you can fear. Like for Izuku, you could fear him having a setback and, say, losing his arms, like they said that was a possibility the doctor did recently. Or have a setback where he can't go to UA anymore, or where, say, he gets held back a year in school, or something happens that goes wrong with one of his classes or something. There's a lot more to fear than just dying for the characters, and I think they do a good job of that, or losing somebody dear to them. There's a lot more that can go wrong for them, that I feel like it's good that it's written the way it is, and I actually like that the deaths are very rare and don't happen that often, because I feel like that makes stuff like that more special. And in addition to making it more special, and again, not spoiling anything that comes in the future of the manga, I'm just saying that as someone who is familiar with the series, deaths in it are not common, I would say. They're things that happen. Death is present in the series. We've seen a bunch of flashback characters that we know haven't survived, like the previous One for All, previous One for All holder, Kota's parents, Stain's victims. We know that there is death, like, intimated with the series, but while the death is a part of the series, we don't have on-screen deaths that much, and I don't think we need it, because a lot of times when I'm watching series that have a lot of on-screen deaths, I feel like, okay, now you're being overly edgy. I feel like a lot of it is done just for the edge. A lot of it is seen shows where there were a lot of deaths and they were really impactful and emotional, and they're like, the answer is a lot of deaths, and they forget to add in that impact and emotion. So whether characters die or not isn't really the big thing here. I think that keeping those characters alive but hurting them is good because they're pro heroes. We don't really need to show deaths on screen, except maybe possibly Best Jeanist. But we don't need to exactly show deaths on screen. We can assume that a lot of people died, though. They just gouged a chunk of the city, all for one, with his attacks. So I would assume that there's probably a lot of casualties going on there. We see heroes out there trying to rescue people, pulling them out of the rubble, and I would assume they can't save every single person in a friggin' partial city of collapsed, destroyed buildings in an instant. So I'd assume there are a lot of casualties going on because of All for One. And I think it actually makes it better writing that it's happening off screen as just random citizens, because it adds more into that All Might is fighting while holding himself back because there are people nearby, like Bakugou and such, whereas All for One's like, I'll just destroy a chunk of city, random people are gonna die, it's not that big of a deal in the end of it. So I think it adds even more into the writing that there are people dying around them that we're not seeing while we're focusing on the heroes and villains doing their stuff. So I actually think it's good that those characters survived, but Best Jeanist proving why he is the best Jeanist. He saves everyone, and I thought the scene was really incredible and chilling. They used that good OST that they had from last time. And one thing I was scared of with this scene, I felt like they were going to censor it more. Because whenever I see something brutal in manga, I'm hesitant when it comes around to the anime, because I'm like, how much are they going to censor that? But in a way, I thought the anime made it look more brutal than the manga did, so I was really impressed, because just when anime censors blood and injuries and stuff, it makes it feel less impactful. Like, I was worried about the same thing with Mount Lady later on, but I'll get to that when we get to that part of the episode. So, again, I like that All for One, the whole rationale behind killing Best Jeanist the way he did was he's talking to himself and he's like, so your quirk is one that requires a lot of training and ability and experience with it to be strong. And he kills him and he's saying that quirk isn't worth saving because it requires all that in order to be strong. Because if you have the power to grab quirks and the power to grab quirks for yourself, or he says it wouldn't suit Tomura, so I'm assuming he's planning to give his power to Tomura. So it's kind of odd. Is he trying to... Because I'm used to evil villains being really selfish and everything. I think most of us are. So your natural thought process leads you to think, is he trying to transfer his spirit, his consciousness himself to Tomura's body? Or is he actually, as he said, trying to raise Tomura up to be the next him? It's kind of an odd situation, and can he just pass on all of the All for One power to him? Because we don't know if passing on all of that, if he can pass on quirks, it would make sense that he could pass on his own quirk. So I guess it does make sense. But it's odd. I'm really, I'm not sure how all of this works out, and I'm not sure what his plan's going to be. So, yeah, either way, he says that the quirk isn't worth saving because it's something that requires a lot of ability, and what I was getting on there is, if you had the power to take quirks and give away quirks, it'd be best to grab ones like Ragdoll's where she can do all that, and from what we know, training, it's 100 people baseline. We don't know if training makes that more or less, but since we don't know that, we can assume that it's just 100 people baseline. So basically you grab abilities like that you can use without really training or anything, and they're still strong. I mean, they could be stronger if you trained them, but who needs to when you just have a bunch? Like with those strengthening quirks, you don't really need to do a ton of training for the strengthening quirks that he got. Just grab them and use them, and Best Jeanist isn't something that you can grab and use very well from the looks of it. So All For One then brings the villains to him, and he gives this great speech to Shigaraki that makes him seem just like a loving teacher, where he's like, it's okay, I'm here for you, you can try again as many times as you want, and I'll just be here to help you out. I'll be here to reset things and protect you. So I like the way he does that, and it makes you think, if you look at this whole thing from Shigaraki's perspective, it's like he's sitting around trying to go through his plan in order to take down who he views as the last boss, the big bad. Then the big bad comes to him, everything is going wrong, and his mentor saves him, and then his mentor stays behind to sacrifice himself. If you're looking at this from Shigaraki and the villains or Villain Alliance's point of view, then it tells that really good typical story that we've seen a bunch. But that's only looking at it from their perspective. So I think it's really cool that you can view the show from that perspective, and Shigaraki's kind of a secondary main character, obviously being built up to be the next All For One, just as Izuku is the next user of One For All. So it's kind of leading up to both Midoriya growing to learn how to be a hero and Shigaraki growing to learn to be a villain. So I do like that they just add so much more into that perspective with this arc. But Ida legitimately saves everyone, because when Izuku was going to run in, if he had, we've seen All For One can destroy places in like less than a second. He could have taken out all them before All Might got there. Just that split second probably saved them, and they were the ones that saved Bakugou, so Bakugou not being taken probably saved more people in the process. And Izuku has... So I've always wondered what happens if Izuku dies. I guess that just means that One For All just goes away if he dies. So yeah, that would have been incredibly bad for the future as well. So Ida legitimately saves like everyone here by stopping Izuku. All Might arrives and exchanges some comedic jabs where All For One is like, oh, that took 30 whole seconds to get over here? You're so slow now, what happened? And All Might's like, you have an industrial zone coming out of your face, what's with the helmet, what happened? So I like that they have those little comedic jabs at each other. I feel like the subs didn't translate them super perfectly, or at least as well as I thought the manga did, but the basic meaning was still there enough that I got it. So there was that. All For One blows All Might away through the city, and again, I love how did I say All For One? I hope I said it right. But I love how All For One is like a little kid when it comes to quirks, where he's like naming off the ones he used and combined, and he's like, this is a fun combination, and he always talks about taking quirks or whatever. This is a good quirk, this one isn't, where he's the super evil villain, but you see that that childishness that again is common in villains, because that sort of lack of maturity in a way is what leads them to being villains. They don't care about the outcome of their actions on others, they just want to do what benefits them and all that. So that all works. What happens next? Then he uses forced quirk activation on Kurogiri, and we learn the difference between Kurogiri's quirk and the one that we just saw All For One use, which is that All For One can only send people away from him or bring people to him, and if he sends someone away from him, he can only send them to somebody that he knows really well. Or I guess the same works for pulling them away, because he pulled them away to him from a distance. Maybe that was because he knew them very well, or maybe that was because they were around Shigaraki and he can also bring people in from around people he knows very well, which would make sense. So that's the difference, where Kurogiri just makes portals and it's coordinate based and really, really OP. Then Bakugou has to try to avoid capture. All For One dragging All Might as All Might was trying to get to him and help him out was great. I don't know. I love that shot where he grabs him, and again the little details where All Might's like clawing at the ground, and then he just like All for One just like flips him backwards back into a building. So all of that really, really good. Then Izuku reveals his plan for saving Bakugou. He says Kirishima has to be the one to do it. We have more confirmation by both All Might himself and Bakugou both thinking it, that, and I think All for One said something too, again, just prodding at All Might, that All Might's holding back. There are people around here, specifically Bakugou, and he has to hold back his power to keep all these giant wind explosions from fighting All for One, from killing everybody around. So he's holding back. Then I love when they go in, the plan starts, and they're flying up the ramp of ice, that face that Shigaraki has where he notices them and he's like, really? It's not a face of really being pissed that much as being just completely shocked. I love that, completely shocked, like, what is he doing here, seeing Izuku as part of that group. Then them saving him was also really, really amazing, because I love, just in general, this whole arc that Kirishima's on, this arc, but the whole arc of him as a character, where throughout the series we see these small background interactions that aren't really anything big, and those small background interactions that we thought weren't anything big actually were. They were actually something that was meaningful to the key plot, which makes me, and I think viewers in general, pay really close attention to all these small details, because you don't know when they're going to be major plot points. So I think that this is the point in the manga where I already loved the series before then. The Stain arc was, and probably still is, my favorite arc. But it was at this point when reading, when I saw that and I saw how the little interactions between Bakugou and Kirishima became a major plot point, that was probably the part that made me think, oh man, this is really special writing. Then, moving on from there, we have an explanation of Magne's quirk being able to turn, I don't remember which one was north, which was south. I think men into south poles of a magnet and women into north poles, but I don't completely remember. And he uses it to send compress flying after them and all that. Oh yeah, I didn't mention the animation, of course, was crazy for Bakugou's jump, of course. It looked really, really great. So they send Compress, and Mount Lady saves the day, being an MVP. So great. Gran Torino arrives and knocks a bunch of them down, so they have to, All for One has to use Force Quirk activation to get them out of there. Toga was hilarious during all that. Her voice actor was great with the and then all the guys come flying at her to knock them all through the portal, and the noise she made when they hit her was great too. So that was all really funny. And working from the villain's perspective again, we have that scene that works as like this devastating mentor sacrifice of him staying behind to valiantly fight while the student lives on to fight another day. We have that from Shigaraki's point of view, which I think is amazing. But one thing that I saw some people mention with the rescue was that them going all out with that animation and making Bakugou jump away like that is like, well, if he could just jump that far and do that, and he can essentially fly if he uses his explosions, then it kind of makes it seem like why'd they have to save him? Why couldn't he do it himself? I think a big point of it was the distraction aspect of Izuku and them running in there, and All Might being able to distract One for All and hold him off at the same time. I think that distraction was a part of it to give Bakugou a chance to fly away, because without it, they likely would have been able to catch him, and especially like Mount Lady jumping up for the save, without that they wouldn't have been able to do anything. Without All Might being able to hold back All for One, they wouldn't have. So it was really a perfect storm of a lot of things coming together, and I think that it makes sense to me, and we still don't know the drawbacks or how it affects Bakugou to be able to fly like that, because he would be doing it pretty much all the time. He'd be doing it a lot more, and he already does it a lot. But I feel like he'd be doing it a lot more if it was like no strain and he could just do it perfectly fine whenever. So I think it's notable, especially that he grabs onto Kirishima's hand and the rest of them in that group. It's notable that I think maybe he can't do it forever, or he would just be flying from place to place pretty easily. He might be able to do that in the future, but at least for right now, we don't know the full drawbacks of it. So to me, I don't have that complaint. I don't think that it's really anything bad that he wasn't able to fly away just on his own, because of a lot of reasons, like them being able to maybe catch him if he tried to. So again, I see where people are coming from with that, but I kind of disagree. Then let's see what happened next after all that. I love the way All Might goes in for an attack, and All For One uses Gran Torino as a human shield by warping him in front of him. That was great, but he uses the transportation or whatever, plus impact inversion, so when All Might makes contact, the punch still seems to hit Gran Torino, but it seems like the impact also gets sent backwards, screwing with All Might's arm. So I liked that really, I liked that a lot too. Then let's see, All For One gives his speech about how the piece that All Might brought wasn't, I don't know, maybe it wasn't good, but again, this is from the villain's perspective, but he was like, your piece came at the sacrifice of all my allies. So it's probably selfishness, because his allies were probably bad people. We know that they were evil and controlling Japan or whatever. So, again, the speech is good for his character. It makes it way more multifaceted, the way he's like, we kind of see why he would stay behind and why his plans are smart, of course, but why he's willing to do stupid things like stay and fight All Might, because he really wants to kill All Might. He has his own personal vendetta, his own personal want for revenge. All Might then gives his rage punch, which I thought was amazing. He's at his limit, and I love that revelation that he does this crazy punch and everything, and it's like he's running out of energy. Holy crap, he just beat the hell out of All For One, and then All For One just talks like he's perfectly fine and nothing's wrong. So again, incredible. And he does the reveal at the end that the previous One For All holder is Shimura Nana, and we heard Gran Torino call her Shimura before. And also that name was mentioned again. So basically, probably the biggest twist in the series has been told straight to our faces twice by now, but I won't go any deeper than that because I don't want to spoil anything for anybody continuing on into the future. So yeah, I guess that's all I'm going to say on that. But some thoughts at the end, just some general thoughts that I didn't get to during my discussion of the episode overall. All For One's character is really, really deep and nuanced, and I like that. The way he's seemingly evil for the sake of being evil for the most part, but he's seemingly evil because he loves quirks and taking them and combining them in different ways and stuff. And it's one of those things where if you have unlimited power, you could choose to be good and to use it for good, or you could just use it to do whatever you want. And he seems like the guy who decided, I have unlimited power, let me just do whatever I want with it. And that's basically the story of him. But he also has these motivations of wanting to groom Shigaraki into the next him, whatever that means, of him wanting to get revenge on All Might because he views All Might as the person who slaughtered his allies. So he has a really deep character just in a few episodes here. I also like that we see that he's fighting without worries. He's just doing whatever. Whoever dies in the process dies in the process. It's fine, because he thought he blew those heroes away, and he was like, oh well, don't need their quirks, who cares? Unless, like, it feels like Mount Lady's quirk would have been pretty good for him, because you can turn into a giant and do those crazy explosions. He could, like, blow the earth away with that shit. So maybe, I don't know. Maybe that's a bad decision on his part. Mount Lady All For One would be too OP, I guess. So yeah, I like the way his character's deep and nuanced. And I guess Giganification, they bring it up that that's not really that uncommon, I think. So it's possible that he could have a quirk like that if he wanted to. But I don't know. Maybe there's something saying that he can't. I have no idea. We don't know the rules of this shit. So all that was great. And I think next week, I'm not ready. I don't think anybody's ready. I'll probably cry. I've teared up rereading this arc in the manga a few times during this season just because I'm so hyped for this stuff to get here. I think that I will be crying next week. I could see that for myself. But yeah, that's it. I've discussed all I could talk about with this episode, and I'm just gonna give it a 10 out of 10. It was really great. 10 ridiculously well animated jumps out of 10 is what I'll give it. So I hope you enjoyed the video and my thoughts on this episode, and the episode itself I hope you enjoyed. If you did like the video, comment down there to tell me what you thought of your thoughts, or what you thought of my thoughts, and what your thoughts are on the episode. Subscribe for more Boku no Hero Academia. I cover both the anime and the manga. The manga, I try to be as spoiler-free as possible with my thumbnails and titles, though, so that anime-only watchers can watch my videos and not really have a problem. And I have a lot of people that I talk to a lot that watch my videos that are anime-only watchers that haven't been spoiled by me, so at least I guess I'm doing okay. I really try to be aware of that, though, and make sure I don't give anything away from the future that isn't vague enough that it would bother anyone. Of course, we're on like season 5 material right now on the manga, though, so we're far enough ahead that it's not going to matter for a while. But still, then I guess follow on Twitter if you want. I can talk to you there. I could or you could. Mainly, you could follow me to keep updated with stuff on the channel. I don't know why I started with you can talk to me there, but yeah, you can talk to me there too. I always enjoy talking to people on Twitter and whatever. And if you want a link to our Discord server, be free to ask for a link, and I'll give you a link if you want. It's free to pretty much anybody watching my videos. Yeah, and we just talk there about stuff I cover on the channel and whatnot. So yeah, if you want a link to the Discord server, ask, I'll give you a link to that. That's it. Thank you once again for watching, and I'll see you all next time.